Hello, everybody. Um, Thanks everyone that joined the Zoom call last night. We all had fun
With me.
with Beth. So today we're going to talk about Good Friday because that is today. This is one of the most, maybe even the most important day in the Christian calendar. So we're going to talk about what happened on Good Friday. So most of you will know what happened on Good Friday, and that was the day that Jesus was crucified. So we're going to go through a few different bits that happen in the Bible that tell us the story. So we'll start with when Jesus was brought before a large crowd, and they were given the chance to either free Jesus or free a man called Barabbas, who was a murderer. So Luke chapter 23 verse 18, it says, "But they all cried out together, 'Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas.'" Then in verse 21 it says, "But they kept shouting, 'Crucify him, crucify him.'" So to start off, see that all the people there want Jesus dead. So much so that they're willing to release a murderer instead of him. So after this, Jesus was taken to the governor's headquarters by some soldiers. And in Matthew chapter 27 verse 28 it says, "They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him and twisted together a crown of thorns. They put it on his head and put a reed in his hand, and kneeling before him they mocked him, saying, 'Hail, King of the Jews.' After this, Jesus was taken..." Oh wait, we'll get there. So we have all these soldiers now, they're mocking Jesus, they're spitting him, they'll be spitting on him, they'll be beating him, they've put this crown of thorns on his head, and all this horrible stuff has been happening to him. So after this, Jesus was taken to a place called Golgotha, and that's where he was crucified. And we know that his hands and his feet were nailed to a cross, and then it would have been lifted up. And I don't know about you, but I can't even imagine how painful it is to just have a nail go through your hand, never mind even hanging from a cross. And this wasn't like an execution that would happen today. You know, if people are sentenced to death today, they're killed by like a lethal injection, which is meant to be a non-painful way to execute someone. But this isn't what happened to Jesus. You know, being crucified was one of the most painful and gruesome and humiliating ways to die. Yeah, it took hours. It could even take up to days of hanging there on the cross. And this was not a good way to die. This wasn't just that people wanted him dead, they wanted him to suffer. So the Bible tells us that there was two men who were crucified alongside Jesus. And in the book of Luke, we see a conversation that happens between them. It says, "One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, 'Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us.' But the other rebuked him, saying, 'Do not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation. And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong.' And he said, 'Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.' And Jesus said to him, 'Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise.'" So in this story, right here, we have these two criminals. One of them's basically saying like, "Oh, if you're Jesus, then like save us from this." And the other one's saying, like, you know, "We've done wrong, we deserve to be hanging here. But Jesus doesn't deserve this, he's done nothing wrong." And he says to Jesus to remember him. And then what Jesus replies is, "Today you will be with me in paradise." This is a guy who's a criminal. He's probably been like, doing stuff wrong his whole life. He's been doing so much wrong that he's now on a cross. He's been put to death because he's done so much wrong. And just by God's grace alone, he was saved, and he went to be with Jesus in paradise. So then we'll go to the book of Matthew again, back to chapter 27 of Matthew. And it tells us that at about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," and that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And this is such a strange point in the Bible, because we know that Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is God, but at this one point he feels complete abandonment because of this, because he's on the cross paying the price for our sins, and he feels the abandonment that a sinner feels. And then verse 50 of that same chapter says, "And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split." And that was it. Jesus had died. And at that exact time, the curtain of the temple was torn in two. So in the Jewish time, it was said that God only dwelled in the temple. But at that time that Jesus died, the curtain was torn in two, and God no longer only dwelt there, but he dwelt everywhere. At that time, God was no longer just for the Jewish people, but was for everyone. So, what can we take away from all this? The first thing and the most important thing is that it was on this day that Jesus died on the cross to pay the price for our sins. This is something we should always remember and be thankful for. Because of what Jesus did on the cross, and because he rose again, which is what we'll talk about on Sunday, we can be free from sin. Isn't that true, Beth?
He died to save us.
He died to save us, in the words of Beth. So if any of you aren't a Christian, just know that, like the thief on the cross, because of what Jesus did, because he died for our sins and rose again, no matter what you've done in your life, you too can one day be with him in paradise if you just put your trust in him. Now we'll just read a couple more verses from the book of Matthew. This is what it says. It says, "Then Jesus told his disciples, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it.'" So we've seen what Jesus did on the cross, and now we hear in this verse that Jesus tells us to take up our own cross. So what does that mean for us? I once heard a seminar at a conference. A guy told us, it's all very well for us to follow Jesus to the cross, and we can stand there and look at him and we can say, "Oh, that was nice of him," then we just walk home. But what we should be doing is following Jesus onto the cross, not just to the foot of it.
And
we should
save everybody.
So what does that mean in our lives today? It means we should be ready to give up anything and everything to follow Jesus. We should be ready for people to not like us, for people to hate us because we're Christians. And we should never lie to people about what we believe for them to like us. For some of Jesus' disciples at the time, it literally meant for them to take up their cross. They were crucified just as Jesus was for spreading the good news about him. So we should all be prepared to do stuff like that. Maybe not get crucified, but Okay, I'm going to quickly pray, then we'll finish.
Already did.
Dear Lord, I thank you that you sent your Son to die for us. Thank you that you sent him to pay the ultimate price for our sins. And because of that, one day we could be with you in paradise. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to remember this always. Lord, help us to take up our cross and to follow you. Help us to live radical lives in you and not try and change the way we are to suit people, and not try and pretend that we don't believe in you just because we want to be liked at school. Pray, Lord, you'd help us to do anything it takes to further your kingdom. Lord, we pray all this in your name. Amen. So we'll be back on Sunday with a talk from Hannah Murray about what happened on Easter Sunday.
No, from me.
Not from Beth.
No, yes.
See you all soon.